Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to another episode of This Week in Banana Bread. What a week it has been. So, we definitely have news. We're going to cover that as well. We're starting to head towards fall as we're in our Holy Banana Bread. Cover that as well. There we go. I always keep it up on the other screen because if I want to make any interactions, I need to do it on that screen, and I forgot to mute it. So that is all on me. But that's a problem I would rather have is a little bit of extra reverberation that I can fix right away, opposed to being on mute and doing half the stream with nobody hearing what I'm saying. That's always a possibility as well. But so far, that has not happened. And you guys are pretty much on the ball. So you'd let me know if it happened anyway. And I try to pay attention even when I'm on a rant. I try to keep my eye a little bit on the chat just so that we know exactly what is going on. So a huge thank you to all of you who are here live today. You guys absolutely rock. And be sure that if you're new here, if you're brand new, be sure to be throwing stuff. Let me know in the comments. Throw your questions in the comments, all that fun stuff. And then, of course, for those of you who watch this on the replay, a huge thank you to you guys too. You guys do make up the majority of the total viewership. So without you, well, we wouldn't have as much viewership, that's for sure. I'd probably still do it though. Yeah, so it's been great. We had our channel membership live stream on Thursday night. We talked a whole bunch about dividends, monthly dividends, and that was pretty darn cool. I really enjoyed that one. We had a little bit of a turnout for that one. Of course, where it's the community members, we don't have as many, but if that's something you want to do, join the community, become a community member, and you can watch the exclusive live stream every month. And plus, I give little updates and stuff throughout the month. And I'm always looking to do more for the channel members. So, and here's the beautiful thing. All the stuff you've missed, if you join today, you can go back and look at it all. So that's kind of neat. And of course, the last little cool thing is in the chat, your name gets to have a little special color, which I think is kind of cool as well. All right. Last piece of housekeeping business is just quick little mention about good old Blossom. So over on Blossom, that is a platform for social media folks to actually connect, talk, get answers, get inspired, all of that fun stuff. So you can definitely find me over there. And let me just drop a link here for you guys for that. When you sign up for Blossom, you can connect with me and then you can sort of see what I got going on over there, and I'll answer questions over there anytime, all of that fun stuff. So over on Blossom, check it out. I think you guys will love it. And also you'll meet a lot of the big YouTubers. So I may not be the only YouTuber you watch. Maybe you watch Brandon Beavis. Maybe you watch Canadian in a T-shirt. They're all over there, and they're a lot more accessible over there than they are on YouTube. Although I will say I do my best to be as accessible as I possibly can on YouTube as well. Because, to me, it's very important. All right, let's take a look in the chat and see who we got here. So we got Wayne saying good afternoon. We got Vaughn in the house. Good day, all. And hello, Jill. Welcome. OM Rars. Afternoon, folks. And Jay is in the house. Thank you for the monthly dividend ETF. And a shout out to Jay. It was his idea because the community channel members get to decide what I do. And that's what Jay wanted, and that's what Jay got. Jonathan says, the best way to recover from Hurricane Lee is YouTube banana bread. Yes, absolutely. Unless you don't have any power, then you'll have to have some banana bread and then put the YouTube in a little bit later. Sammer says, Bom dia all LOL. Awesome. That made me think of Bombardier for some reason when I saw that. I saw a news article on Bombardier when I was looking for some news stories for today, and I almost put them in. But Bombardier is a company that was almost down and out, but in the last little while, they've been up almost 500%. So they are definitely a success rebound story. So if you've been on the fence with Bombardier, that might be someone just to take a gander at because they are doing pretty darn good. Wayne says, so Brandon is now a partner in Blossom. Yes, absolutely. So Brandon Brandon, I was going to say Brandon. I don't know what I was going to say, but Brandon Beavis over there on Blossom, he is now, he wasn't a founding partner, although he was very much involved in the whole process, but they have extended that to him, and he is now considered a founding partner over there. See, I'm just an ambassador, which means I get a little bit of a extra thing on my profile thing. But yeah, it's and plus I get access to a lot of the other YouTubers, which is kind of cool. Yeah. Richard from Montreal says hi. Hello, Richard. Good to see you. All right, let's hit that. Let's hit the news. Let's get to that very first news story of the day, which is the state of oil. So, what the banana bread is going on with oil? Now, oil is growing in price quite a bit. So the global supply is shrinking right now. And the reason it's shrinking is that a lot of the OPEC countries are basically cutting that supply. They're trying to drive the price of oil up, and it's working. Now, I know that Biden's in a situation where he's already released so much of their strategic oil reserve that, well, that becomes a bit of an issue when it comes to basically trying to. Sorry, I just hear noise off in the distance that's distracting me a tiny bit, hoping I don't get a copyright strike or something because of it. And that sometimes happens. Sometimes it's funny. Copyright, when it comes to YouTube, is very, very finicky. I have heard of people, because of a car driving by with playing some kind of song, where they've actually gotten a copyright strike. So hopefully you guys can't hear the music in the background. I'm really hoping not. All right. Back to the whole oil topic is, so Biden right now, he doesn't really have much left in the strategic oil reserve to release. So he doesn't really have a lot of tools to really combat it. Now, this week that just passed. So WTI, that's the West Texas Intermediate, and that's how the U.S. sort of judges the price of oil. That broke $90 a barrel. And that's the first time this has happened since, well, November of 2022, because we've been down for quite a while. Now, the Brent crude, which is another way that we measure oil prices, but this is used more on the international stage. So Brent crude has been trading at roughly $93 a barrel. So the prices are going up. And as long as, well, I mean, here's the thing. The colder months are coming. So we are looking at a situation where things are going to get really, really, really cold. And that means as oil gets more and more in demand, we could really see a spike within the prices of oil over the next probably 3, 4, maybe even 5 months. So if you've got your oil investments, they should be doing you well over that amount of time. I know I certainly have mine, and I'm looking forward to watching them going nice and deep in the green as we move along into that process. All right. And let's see here. And the freaking Oracle saying Biden is allowing drilling again, too. That's another thing. But you got to look at it this way. I don't think that's really going to do anything quickly. So we'll have to see how that all works out. Queen of the Hop says, hey, Queen of the Hop. That is awesome to see you. All right. Let's just jump over and get our next story going. All right. Now, their next story is GST. What? GST. So as you guys know, we've got a bit of a housing crisis. It's been happening for quite a while. Now, here's the situation. What the government has decided to say is that for new multi-residential dwellings, so in other words, for developers who want to create new apartments, they're going to exempt them from the GST. So the thought is, by making labor to build new apartments and the cost of materials cheaper, hopefully more developers are going to want to buy some of these houses. Are going to want to build some of these apartments. Now, we did know that Canada still needs about 3.45 million more homes by 2030. And that's basically just to try to get the price of an affordability levels back to where they used to be. I don't think we're going to hit that number, but this is at least a move in that right direction. So I'm okay with that. Now Richard is coming back with, is Enbridge a buy? So Enbridge right now is down. There was a little bit of there was some dilution there with their big purchase, but I think it's a buy. I do think it's a buy. I think it's a solid blue chip. They're going to recover. The price is going to go up. It also has a very good dividend on it, which is not a bad thing. So I would call Enbridge a buy in my opinion, of course. Still, of course, do some more research if you're interested in good old Enbridge. I don't know what Biden is doing, and he doesn't either. That's possibly a problem. Yeah. The friggin' Oracle says the problem developers are not building apartments, just houses, which is causing the issue. Built new apartment buildings here, 20 or 21 or 2, yeah, 2 to 3K a month. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. When you start building the apartments, you're going to basically be creating more housing for your buck. So if you take the space that an apartment building uses and you were to just build residential homes in there, you're simply just not going to be able to house as many people. So I think that's kind of the whole idea. Let's try to do this. I mean, at this point in time, yeah, we're going to just need it. Especially we have immigration as well. Our immigration right now is high. There's a big push on immigration. So because of that, we are definitely looking at a situation where there's going to be a need for a lot of housing as we continue. Apartments are a perfect place for somebody who's new to Canada just to get their feet and get everything started. Plus, at this point, like when you actually look at how much it costs for a down payment for some of these outrageous priced houses, apartments are more of an option for most people at this stage of the game, unfortunately. So that's one of those things we have to look at. Vaughn says, what would be the best investment vehicle for critical materials and or energy transition materials? Ah, there's a lot. I think there's a lot of good materials when it comes to investment. Like I know everybody goes to the standard lithium or gold, but there's just to me there's a whole lot out there. Now here's an interesting thing. I know the U.S. just recently found a very big deposit of lithium. So how will that impact the price of lithium up here? It's hard to say. Just because they found it, they still have to develop the process of getting it out of the ground. And we already do have that. So I do think that lithium is still pretty safe. I think gold is still pretty safe. So I would say stick with what's tried and true. And, or you could even see if you could find an ETF that sort of covers a bit more of the sector. But definitely lithium, definitely gold. Um, Not keen on I've never really been keen on silver. I know some people love silver, but I'm not keen on it. Let's see. I recently had FRO, an oil transportation company. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, you have to look when you're looking at the entire oil industry, right? You got your, you got midstream stuff, it's one of those things that there's a lot of moving pieces. And yeah, all of that oil has to be transported, whether it be through pipelines, whether it be rail, you name it. There's a lot of different ways you can transport oil. And that is a good place to make money because when that oil sector and when oil is up, all of these side things are going to be making money, right down to the utility sector as well. And I've got something interesting on the utility sector that we will mention a little bit later. Let's see. Wayne says crude is up over $1 now from Friday's close. Still long since July, targeting slightly over $100. I absolutely see $100 before the end of the year. And we're talking on the WTI, so West Texas Intermediate. So yeah, I definitely think we're going to see that. I think oil is not going down. The only thing that could throw us a monkey wrench is if for some reason they have another very, very mild winter in Europe. And I don't think that's going to be the case this year. But if they did, that could cut some of that demand. But OPEC could very well, in a case like that, say, let's voluntarily cut even more oil because they really want that price up. And I don't know if it's a situation where they don't like Biden and they're sort of foiling him. But, I'm not going to get into that politic part of it. But I think OPEC is committed to keeping the price high. And I think we're going to see that price probably break 100. So I would agree with you on that, Wayne. The friggin' Oracle, we had 500K immigration flux last year alone. Yeah, absolutely. And we're looking at a lot more. And that's one of the reasons that you really have to take with a grain of salt sometimes when you look at like our job numbers, because when you have such a huge influx of immigrants, that creates jobs, right? Because they're coming over, and a lot of them are going to start businesses, especially the more wealthy ones. They're all going to be using businesses. They're going to be creating more demand for stuff. It doesn't matter how the economy is, whether it's doing good or doing bad, it's going to create a need. That need is going to create jobs. So you got to keep that in mind. And I think the Bank of Canada, when they're looking at jobs numbers, they're also starting to think about that as well. Um, Especially, I think we covered this last week or the week before. We had like an extra million people that somehow they missed. So that's kind of interesting there with the way some of the economy is going. And it makes me wonder too, some of the strength in the job numbers in the US is, I think the US is also looking at a pretty big influx of immigration as well. I mean, that's the whole thing. I was actually watching a video last week about population centers and where things have been going population wise. And when you remove immigration from Canada and from the US, we're actually have a birth rate that isn't completely meeting a sustainability for our population. So normally, what they say is for sustainability, you need about every couple needs to create 2.1 children. And right now, without immigration, we're right around two. So we're not hitting that. So reason that you need 2.1 opposed to two is that, some people don't make it, like when they're born. Some children may die, for example, before they become adults, things like that. So there are different reasons that the statistics say 2.1. So it's very, very interesting to see that our populations are getting bigger, but a lot of that immigration is really driving that. Let's see. Mountain of Inspiration is back. Happy Sunday, Dr. Candace. And a thumbs up. Thumbs up done. Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Guys, just if you haven't done it yet, smash that like button, because that's what keeps the folks knowing that there's stuff going on. Basically, the algorithm sees all the likes and then they send it out, and then new people discover it. People who are maybe bored, they're flipping around on YouTube, nothing to watch on a Sunday afternoon. All of a sudden, because you guys hit that like button, I pop up and they end up over here. And that's kind of darn cool. And Mountain of Inspiration on the three-peat says, Happy Sunday, everybody in the chat. Absolutely. We got Lisa in here saying hello. We got Queen of the Hop. I see the GST rebate for rental unit builders as a bonus for the builders that won't get passed down as lower or affordable rent. You're 100% correct there. It's not going to be passed down as lower or affordable rent. And that's fair enough, because I think the government is just trying to give them incentive to build those apartments. So yeah, you're not going to get a break. It's not going to help us, other than the fact that if you create more and more housing, then the need and the demand for apartments lowers. And when that lowers, when we have more apartments than we have renters, that's where we'll start to see a break in some of these costs. But until then, yeah, they're going to still be high, especially if we get another rate hike, because I'm kind of iffy on that next rate hike for the Bank of Canada. If we get it, that's going to hurt as well. Richard says, I think they found lithium in BC. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, they have a lot of really good lithium deposits in BC. BC is a great place. Well, BC, because you've got the mountains, there's just basically what created the mountains, which were plates coming together, pushing that land up. So when you push land up into mountains, you're pushing minerals up too. So that is one of the reasons they have really good mining in there. There's also really good mining, of course, up in the Canadian Shield, which is also great. And that's kind of a different situation, because with the Canadian Shield, it's not that it got pushed up. It's that a lot of the top earth got scraped off by glaciers during the last ice age. So you're closer to the minerals as a result. So just, kind of a different process, same kind of idea in a way. Mountain of Inspiration says, excellent point. We need more people to keep our economies going. Yeah, absolutely. Jordan's in the house with a hey-ho or a hey-oh. Yeah, something like that. All right. Vic says, do you have any idea how hard it is to drive, watch, and type a comment. Um, Here's the if you want to type a comment because you're watching this as you're driving, pull over. Pull over and make type your comment, because the last thing I want is I don't want to be the cause of an accident. So definitely the responsible thing, pull over, make your comment, then you can get back on the road. Vic says BMO no longer doing auto loans. Ah, that is interesting. I heard a little bit about that, but not a lot. But yeah, that doesn't really surprise me. Does that mean BMO is losing so much money on loans that they are just giving up? Um, I don't know the full details on that, so I'm not going to really answer that. But I can see that it feels that way. But I think you're still going to have, if anything, I think it's more of a temporary measure if that's what they're doing. I honestly don't know. I can't answer that. Let's see. Mountain of Inspiration says, "Ouch! No more auto loans. That sucks." Well, that would suck. I mean, yeah. I mean, there'll always be autumn loans, but it just whether BMO opts out of doing them, you'll still have other places that will, and there's always going to be a lot of the third party ones, so that those ones are going to pay you a bit more. Well, pay you. Those ones going to charge you a bit more interest, so that is never good. Nine says a banana bread for life. Yeah, absolutely. We got to feed the banana bread militia something. So banana bread it is. You know, our army has really good ration packs. Let's see. Vic is saying BMO is referring to loans between them and vehicle settlers, not buyers. Oh, okay. There we go. So there we go. That makes more sense. So lots of loan losses. Article mentions losses from 106 million to 400 plus million. Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely get to that. Hi, are you a geologist by training? No, I am not a geologist by training, though I do like geology and I do understand a lot of geology. Interesting fact, when I was in high school and applying for universities, I did have somebody reach out to me from the Dalhousie Geology Department to try to talk me into taking geology at Dalhousie. And I was like, no, I'm going to, I want to take biology and chemistry. So anyway, yeah. But and here's another fun fact. Since we're talking about geology, I had a job once with Alberta Innovates, and it was basically looking at a lot of geological type reports from scientists, mostly about carbon capture, and a little bit of geology around that. And I was helping to categorize and catalog and put a lot of them into an online database. So it was just an interesting little thing. Let's see. BMO covered calls, call ETF, good dividends. Yeah, there are some good. I mean, yeah, there definitely is. Bank of Montreal, they do have. I think they have pretty good covered calls. I know I've heard a few people who are like, no, they're garbage, but I like them. I think they're more stable, and I think they're less risky than a lot of other covered calls. But once again, and I had this big discussion the other night on the channel member live stream just about covered calls and the whole idea of erosion versus return on capital. But yeah, and I'm actually looking at doing another covered call ETF video pretty darn soon, probably within a month, I think. And I want to touch on some of the stuff that we sort of stumbled into on there. So it'll look pretty fun. Chad is in the house. Hey, Chad. ZWD, rich, no growth, but dividend. Yeah, in some cases, that's the situation. You have to look at a fund and figure out, okay, well, what is the purpose of the fund? Because sometimes growth is not the purpose of the fund. Some funds are put together with one goal in mind, to produce income and to keep the income coming to you. And if you are a passive income investor, so let's say, for example, I'll give you a perfect example. Let's say you've just retired. You've got all these covered call ETFs sitting in your TFSA that's producing for you a whole bunch of passive tax-free income that you're getting that's not affecting any of your other supports. That's a beautiful thing. And that may be a thing where you don't really care. You're never going to pull them out as long as, for the rest of your days, because all of that passive income is making your life so much better. So in a case like that, you're going to be saying, well, okay, I don't care if the price went down a dollar from from when I first bought this ETF. They've given me more than that dollar in income and it keeps coming. So I'm okay with that. So you want to sort of keep that in mind. Um, let's see here. Chad says ZWC. It's funny. I once worked at a call center as well, where I talked to American clients, and I kind of got trained to say Z because Americans were like, you'd say Z, and they'd be like, what? So it's kind of funny there. Oh, I missed a couple things here. See, because I just sort of jumped all around. All right. Right here. All right. So if we want a car, less credit, higher interest, and longer amortization, houses for 70 to 90 years, and cars for 10 to 20 years. I mean, it's getting a little bit ludicrous. And I don't see an easy solution. I don't see this as something that's going to go away anytime soon. You've already got the Bank of Canada that's kind of like thinking, well, people shouldn't be making any more money. That's going to cause issues. That is going to basically, fuel more inflation. That I just can't agree with that because I really think people need a living wage. And I know right now we've got a lot of people who make that lower end of on the lower end of the wage spectrum that I don't even know how they're surviving some of them. Some of these folks, you know, I think they're in a situation where you might have 4 or 5 people in a single apartment. You know, it's ridiculous because it never used to be that way. People used to be able to afford, the basic necessities of life. And I really think that we need to find a way to get back to people being able to afford basic necessities. There's no easy solution, though. There really isn't. We'll have to sort of see where it goes, but I'm not optimistic on it happening, on that problem being fixed anytime soon. And I'm also thinking it's going to get worse before we can try to get it to be a little bit better. So you're a rock hound like me. Rocks, yeah, gotta love rocks, hey. I've always liked when it comes. We keep going back to geology. I should have just called this one. Let's just talk about geology. Some of my favorite things is, I mean, I love like volcanoes, volcanism, plate tectonics. I find that to be really, really interesting, and also just the whole relationship between some of the geological patterns that we've seen on the planet and some of the geological interactions and how that has shaped the way people are today, as in cultures, societies, where we live. So I find all of that insanely fascinating, and I've been known to just sit down and binge a few documentaries, and geology is one of those topics that I probably watch more of than you would expect. Thoughts on yield max? Okay. Yield max is really interesting because they have those synthetic covered call ETFs. So they're using longs and shorts in their covered calls. And that is interesting. So I think there's a potential for them to be really, really good. I think at the same time, they just don't have the history. And where they're a new thing, I'm a little bit leery. So I would say if you want some of these crazy yields that they're offering, yeah, absolutely go for it. However, don't put in any more than you're willing to lose just until we get a little bit of a history and we can see the stability of these things over a longer period. I do have a feeling, though, that as the markets improve and we start getting into more of a bull market, a lot of these, like there's a lot of different investments right now that I don't touch very much of. For example, split core, but they start to look a little bit better when you get into a bull market, and I usually then will move in a little bit because then I'm not so much worried about them just deciding, oh, let's not have a dividend or things like that. I don't think that's going to happen with the yield max. I think they're doing really well. And I noticed that they keep adding a lot more stocks. So I do want to actually do another video on yield max because now we're starting to get a little bit of history, at least with the initial ones. So for example, like the TSLY, that one's been around for a little bit. So it'd be really interesting to dig a bit deeper into that. A baker. Yes. I used to actually make banana muffins all the time. I took them to work and people would be like, oh, we need your banana muffins again. But yeah, so that was always kind of cool. I hope share. Let's see. I have yield shares and some yield max. And whoops, here we go. Oops meant ZWCE. Yeah, there's a lot of different ones. We got some hand signals from Chad and 9. So if you don't use the FHSA after 15 years, you can choose to transfer the securities into an RRSP. I wonder how Wealthsimple will handle it because I don't want to withdraw the funds at that time. So I think it's going to be an automatic thing. But here's the beautiful thing. If you, let's say you have an RRSP that's completely maxed out, and then you maxed out your FHSA, but you didn't use it, then after the 15 years, that 40,000 that you have in the FHSA is going to get dumped into your RRSP and expand that room. So, and you basically gain a 40,000 extra cap inflation to your RRSP because you did that. So if it's a situation, this is why the FHSA is worth it, because it does really, really help with the RRSP if you're looking at it being maxed. Now, if you're a person who's like, I don't care about my RRSP so much, I don't want to create a whole bunch of income when, in retirement because I want to live off of some of these supports, and I'd rather have my TFSA taken care of first, then your FHSA might just be, well, it's still an avenue to earn more money, unless you've got a TFSA that has no space and you know that you're never going to get it filled by the time you hit retirement. So let's say you just started investing right now and you're like 60, you're probably not going to get your TFSA filled unless you're pulling in an insane amount of money. And that could be possible, but it's always about the math. So I always keep that into consideration. And holy cow, we still got lots of news to go. And but we got the question. I love this. I love this interaction. So, how many people do you know can get a car to last 20 years? I mean, ours is 2 years away, but very few can do that. Yeah, absolutely. And especially when you live in the climate that Canada has, you've got things like salt that's not very good for your car, potholes not very good for your car. So 20 years is a long time to expect to get out of a car. Some people have begun to start going into things like leasing cars instead. You got to kind of weigh the pros and cons of all of them, but buying a brand new car is probably not the best idea just because of how much they are, how quickly they deteriorate. But if you can get a good used car at a half decent price, and I know it's getting harder to do that, that might be a better option altogether. So, okay, let's see here. I don't know. Have friends buy new trucks every 5 years? Yeah. Well, if you're using, and here's the thing, if that truck is for a business, or if you have like let's say, for example, you use a truck because you're a farmer, or if you use a truck because you do construction, a lot of times you can write off a lot of that expense. So that makes it a little bit easier to buy a new truck every 5 years. Richard says, mortgage equal mort, death plus cage pledge. It's almost like a deal until it's almost like you'll be passing your mortgages on. So houses are overpriced in Ontario, BC. Yeah, they're getting overpriced everywhere. It's kind of ridiculous how much the housing market has absolutely exploded in Canada. I'm not sure why people would want to live there and living outside their means. Yeah, I can absolutely understand that. 9, yeah, you want to expand your RRSP, then fill up that home buyers account, your first time home buyers, and that will transfer over there, and that's not a bad thing. Okay, let's get to the next news article as we finally got caught up. That was awesome. I like that. What is next? The U.S. auto strike. Okay, so we got a big thing happening in the U.S. with basically 3 big companies. So Ford, GM, and Stellantis. Stellantis is the company that used to be Chrysler. They went on strike as they're covered, as all 3 of those are covered by the United Auto Workers Union. It's really interesting. So they've gone on strike. We've got all of these car manufacturers shut down. A lot of people are panicking. I heard something about Biden talking about trying to get them back, but I think he should keep his nose out of that personally. For me, it's like, unless it's an absolute essential business, you should probably not stick your nose into it politically. Um, Interestingly enough, in Canada, we have a union representing Canadian auto workers. That's called Unifor, and it's the same three companies, but they're going to be in a strike position basically next week. If they do not reach a deal, they may be we may be getting a strike up here as well. Now this is kind of good news for one company. This helps Tesla. Here's the interesting thing. Tesla is really on the verge of having some really good things happen. One of the big things that Tesla has figured out is that via 3D printing, they can make, when you make a mold, normally for a part, you make a mold and it has part on it. You have one for each part. Well, Tesla has found a way using 3D printing to make a mold that has multiple parts on it. So they can put a whole bunch of different parts on the same mold, which is going to save them a ton of money. And here's what's the beautiful thing is that this means that once they've got this ironed out, they will be able to make a Tesla a lot cheaper than any of the other car manufacturers can make their EV vehicles. It basically puts them heads above everybody else when it comes to prices, and they're going to be able to. They're even looking at they're predicting that with this new technology, their cheapest Tesla will be about $25,000. So that's absolutely crazy. This could be huge for Tesla. And if you think about those yield max, that Tesla one or even the purpose Tesla one, that could be good for them as well. It'll be interesting to see how quickly this all happens. But I would watch Tesla stock, even with this strike right now that's going on, because it could be very, very interesting. All right. Our next story is on the US CPI. So that did come out this week. Now, CPI rose 0.6%, and that's exactly what they were expecting, meaning right now their total inflation is at 3.7%. The core rose, so CPI core, which is when you remove oil and groceries, they rose 0.3%. They were actually expecting 0.2%. So that came in a little bit hotter than expected. And they're kind of thinking the reason for this has been the price of oil going up has caused a lot of extra cost within the whole system. So here's the interesting thing. We do have the Feds. They are going to be meeting very soon, like this week. They're going to be meeting for their next rate hike decision. I still think it will be a pause for the US Fed, but we'll have to sort of see. I know something like this, they may look at it and go, but I think they will pause. I do think we're going to see one more before the end of the year, but I don't think it's going to be this one. So I think we're going to get a pause on that. All right, now let's talk about, we're going to talk about the scammers on the phone. So there was a report that came out. So Canada currently, there's something called a vishing scam. So vishing, basically, it's when a scammer pretends to be a company. And they're basically trying to trick you into giving them personal information. So that's called vishing. It's very much like phishing, but vishing. So what we're hearing is that according to TransUnion, we were up 1.3% from last year. So this is an all-time high. So scamming has gotten absolutely crazy. I don't know about you guys, but I've been getting calls after calls after calls. Lately, it's always been this thing that my social security number is or my social insurance number has been invalidated because of some fraudulent activity, and then they want me to talk to them. I'm like, I'm not going to, but I've been getting that one a lot. I think just the other day there was one point in time I got about 5 of them in 1 hour. So, have you guys noticed that there is a lot more of these coming out? Are you guys getting hit with these scam calls? It's at the point now that unless I recognize the number on the phone, I'm probably not going to answer it. Occasionally I do, just because I get curious to see what type of scam it is this time. But most times I'm going to leave them alone. So it's really interesting. So in the first half of this year, so we're talking 2023, Canadians have actually been defrauded a total amount of $283.5 million. That's crazy. Like, who is still falling for these frauds? Because the news is out there. I'm thinking it's people who just don't have a lot of technology, or they're not really paying attention to the news, because it's everywhere. I would think by now, hopefully, people would be educated, but yet I still see it. I see people like my mom or a lot of her friends on Facebook dropping stuff, and I'm like, "Oh my god, that's obviously a scam. Why are you guys even perpetuating it?" Like, some of these things that people do, like, there's lots of really subtle things that you may not even realize are scams. So when people say like, "Oh, this is a Facebook post from Bill Gates, and the first 500 people that share it, he's going to give $1,000 to," and everybody's sharing it like crazy. All they're doing is basically the scammers on that are just looking for, well, they're not gaining a lot of information from that. They're just gaining the fact that you're gullible. So if you're one of these people that shares it, you're probably going to see some more spam, more integrate spam attempts come in afterwards, because you've now been identified as somebody who is gullible. So you want to keep that keep that in mind. Now Wayne says, I got one of those calls. Told the idiot that I was 107 years old and never had a SIN number. Took him a while to figure it out. Absolutely. And OM Ross says, yeah, plenty. And Jordan says, I don't get those calls anymore. There we go. Well, you're lucky. You're lucky. Um, yeah, so they consider my number as burned. I'm, as they call it, over smart. Well, that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing at all if you're not getting them. Now, I know there's technology that the CRTC has been bugging the phone companies to put into play, but problem is they're only identifying a little bit. Like you probably noticed lately, you'll sometimes get it where it says likely fraud. So they are identifying some, but not very many. And the spammers, as soon as you put in some kind of system to stop them, they find a way around it. So you always have to be vigilant, with whether it be with your phone or if you get texts or you get, especially that thing, the CRA one, I think catches a lot of people off guard. When it's tax time, you're always seeing these, hey, you get a tax refund from the CRA. Just click here and we'll deposit it in your bank. Yeah, right. You give them your banking information, they're not making a deposit, they're making a withdrawal. Just keep that in mind because that does happen. Um, and yeah, Richard's saying scammers target the elderly. I got stuck a day working in one of those call centers. It was scary. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, and that's the thing. I mean, seniors are a huge target for scammers. So it's one of those things you want to be very careful. And a lot of times, if you have somebody who's a senior citizen, especially if they're living alone and they're just at that point where they're at that point where they want to talk to anybody anyway. Sometimes it's really easy just to suck them in. And I know there was one going around where somebody would pretend to be one of their grandkids, and saying that they were in trouble and they just needed some money. And so many seniors fall for stuff like that. So if you're a senior watching this, be vigilant. Be vigilant. If anybody's asking you for money, you don't give it to them. Don't give it to anybody. Anybody. Here's the thing. If I get an email, even if I get an email from my mom, with something in it to download that she wants me to look at, I'll actually contact her and make sure that it's a legitimate something and not some crap thing she found that she was kind of concerned about. Because sometimes that's what happens. They forward stuff, or sometimes they download something and then it forwards to everybody in their contact list. That's how they propagate some of these. So yeah, absolutely. Never give money, never give information unless you're 100% sure. And there's nothing wrong. If somebody were to call you and say, hey, I'm with Bell, and let's say you have Bell, and they said, I want to talk to you about the money that you owe us. And maybe you do owe money to Bell just because they happen to hit on. And then you say, okay, I would love to. I'm going to call you right back. Hang up, call Bell. Talk to Bell directly. Don't talk to the person who called you saying, oh, I'm from Bell. Especially if they say, if they call you and they say, I'm from Bell, we need to verify your identity now. So tell me your full name and your social insurance number. No, never, ever give any of that out. It's absolutely, it's absolutely a bad idea. So we'll just keep that as it is. Let's see. Jordan says, I did get a fake PayPal email this week. Been a while for that. Yeah, I still get regularly text messages that are absolutely scammers. Bonnie says, yes, the seniors are. My mom had 97 antivirus scams on her phone when I took it to the kiosk to be looked at. I had to give her a talk. She clicks everything. Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you're talking about seniors, at least the seniors that we have now, because they're the baby boomers, and they lived most of their life without the internet and without all of the higher technology that we take for granted. Because of that, it's so easy for them to fall victim. Whereas if you grew up with today's technology and the internet, I think you're going to be a lot couth. Like you take now anybody in their 30s today, when they become seniors, they're not going to fall for the stuff that the seniors today are falling for because they should have had a whole lifetime of being prepared for this. But of course, mind you, at that point in time, the scammers will have much more sophisticated scams. So that's something we all have to look forward to as they keep getting better and doing everything they can to, to steal, because that's what they're doing. They're stealing money. It's a crime. That's what I'm just saying. Credit balances. Let's switch to that story. Okay. So balances on our credit cards, they have hit record highs in Q2, and this is according to Equifax. So right now we're at an all-time high of 107.4 billion. Now, and this is a number that almost throws me. So consumer debt has hit a total in Canada of $2.4 trillion. So we're talking that T word. That's like, wow, that's a lot of debt. So even with these sky-high figures, people are at least starting to be a little more hesitant on overall spending, especially with the situation that we're in with the economy. Now, here's something I thought was really interesting. So those balances on people who have really good credit, they went up 9% in the last year. For people who have lower credit, so the lower credit segment, they actually went up 13.7% in the last year. So it sort of goes to show us, I think the people who are struggling more probably are those people who have, a little bit lower credit. And this is kind of a reflection of that. So I think the economy and some of the issues that we're facing with higher interest rates, that's the segment that's getting hurt the most. And I think this data is absolutely reflective of that. Jordan says, gonna come up on the screen. There we go. We are the generation that grew up seeing the dawn of the digital age. We started as analog and saw the birth of digital. Now we can bridge them flawlessly. Yeah, to a certain extent. Now, if I were to sit you in front of a ham radio, you probably may not know how to use that. Maybe you do, but I'm saying most cases, I think you'd probably be like, huh? Other than you just probably would pick up the receiver and talk into it. But, I'm sure that it goes sort of in both directions that way. Larry's in the house. He says, howdy. And let's see, I got back into gold and silver, 3x 2F ETFs this week. Yeah, gold had a pretty good week. Definitely, gold, I think, did pretty good. I don't know how silver did this week. I wasn't really watching silver, but I did notice that gold was doing pretty good. So hopefully you did some pretty good. Now, when you say 3x, 2x, I think you're talking about a leveraged ETF. So leveraged ETFs are a fantastic way to make a lot of money or lose a lot of money. So you always want to be careful. Make sure the market is moving in the direction you want it to be when you start dabbling in a leveraged ETF. Lisa says, Canadian auto workers deadline coming up too. Okay, and she works for Stellantis Chrysler. Holy cow. There's a few words today that there's actually, at least coming up in the news, there's one word that I know I'm going to screw up, and it's going to be fun, kind of like I just called Chrysler. So, oh dear. Anyway, at least it should be amusing for you guys watching when I completely mess up a word. That should be kind of fun. All right, we're almost through the news. We will hammer out the next one. Cheaper food. So we have a situation right now where the federal government, they're coming back from their break. So they have asked all of the heads of Canada's major food retailers to sort of help them do something about inflation and the high cost of food. So the companies are being tasked with coming up with a plan to stabilize prices by Thanksgiving. Now, Trudeau actually said that if the grocers fail to come up with a plan that provides real relief for middle and lower class Canadians, the government will take further action that forces the companies to do so. So, no more or less likely, he's talking about some kind of a tax or something on them, which I don't know how that will help, but that's what's going on with the price of food. I don't think, I think that problem here is with oil going up, it's kind of an uphill battle because we got, well, you add the carbon tax, the price of oil going up, that's going to drive up the price of gasoline. As gas goes up, it's going to just cost more to get the food from, from farmer to grocer. So it's going to be a tough battle. And I, I, I don't know how these guys are going to, how they'll play ball. Like right now, a lot of the major groceries, they're saying we're making our money off of prescriptions and non-grocery stuff. But I'm sure they're making some money off of food. They've been pulling in a lot of record profits. So just sort of keep that in mind. It is Sunday. Yes, it is Sunday. I hope so. Otherwise, we've got the live stream on a wrong day. Actually, that would be kind of funny if I ever did that. Um, but you never know. You never know. Yeah, that would be funny. All right, let's get to our last story. So this is going to be the last story, crypto rounds. We're just going to do this every week. We're going to look for the crypto stuff and we're going to pile it into crypto rounds. So I do get a couple little things here on crypto this week. So FTX, they're back in the news because a judge has said that they are allowed to sell, invest, and stake some of their crypto holdings. But here's the stipulation. The profits from that have to go back to pay their creditors. And right now, they're at a point where they owe roughly $8.7 billion to their customers. And right now they have 3.4 billion in crypto assets. So that's the money they're talking about investing and trying to build it up so that they can then start paying off some of their customers. All right. Now I mentioned there was a word I had to say that is probably going to go horribly wrong, and it's this one. So this all happens in Germany, where the douche the douche the douche bank. I know I was going to mess it up. The Dutch or Dutch. I cannot say German in their word, their language. But anyway, that douche bank is partnering. I'm sorry, that's just funny. They're partnering with the crypto firm Taurus to provide some custody services for crypto held by institutional clients. So it's kind of good to see this type of thing happening within the market where you do have banks starting to say, okay, yeah, you know what, this is going to be a thing. Let's do this. So I do think we're seeing a little bit of positivity in crypto. And now, apparently, also in crypto news, so CoinEx, which is a crypto exchange, they were reportedly hacked for about $27 million this week. So apparently this was all 27.8 million. It was lost on multiple blockchains. So we're looking at mostly Ethereum, Tron, and Polygon, which is your Matic. So that is kind of interesting. You'd think that you would think we'd be a little more secure at this point in the game where, there have been successful hacks. So hopefully they over there at CoinEx, they increase their security a little bit so this type of thing doesn't happen. But here's the thing. A lot of times, once we finally get to the bottom of these hacks, a lot of times they do turn out to be inside jobs. So we'll have to see if that's a situation here. If the friggin' Oracle is still here, he might have more insight on this. If you know anything else, throw it at. All right, let's see here. Oh, and CoinEx did assure their users that they will be compensated for all of their losses. Okay, here we go. I just see a few people telling me how to pronounce that word, so we'll get there in a second. Long puts on Tesla Bank auto loan rejections now at 27%. And Taiwan Semiconductor pulling all orders for chip machines. Long Toyota, that is back to number one. Car first quarter was Tesla number one, Toyota 2345. Okay. Yeah, and that's the thing. I'm definitely feeling like I think long puts on Tesla is probably a really good idea at this point, just going back to what we had mentioned. Now Wayne says it say Deutsche Bank. There we go. Deutsche Bank. That sounds a lot better than what I said. Um, Deutschmark. Oh, and then Jill says it's pronounced Deutschmark. I'm just going to try to avoid ever saying that word again if I can help it. So we'll have to see. Oh, I put there we go. Put Jill's up there. All right, now couple more little pieces of housekeeping here. So this week coming up in Canada, we have on Monday we got the PPI, and on Tuesday we have the CPI, so that we get an idea of what's going on inflation wise. So the PPI is the producers price index, and your CPI, of course, is your consumer price index. So we're going to get a good shot of our inflation with both of those. Down in the US on Wednesday, September 20th, that's when we have the Fed interest rate decision. I think it's going to be a pause. So we'll have to see how that is. There's really no noteworthy earnings coming out this week. So earnings is pretty much a blank. All right, let's there we go. Turn everything back to yellow. And that, my friends, is the news this week. All right, now I'm going to get back to the main comments. Here we go. Perfect. All right, so coming up on the channel, what do we got coming? For Tuesday's video, we're looking at utility companies. So Tuesday, we're looking at the utility sector to find some half-decent stocks in there that are making some good returns. On Friday, I'm so used to when it used to be Monday and Thursday. On Friday, right now, the deep dive is looking like Canoe. Canoe seems to have a death grip on everybody. So it's looking like it'll probably be Canoe, which is fine. We haven't done Canoe in a while yet. And I know a lot of people love Canoe. So we'll have to see how that's going to look out. We'll be back here again, of course, next week to do our to do the live stream. And just give me a second here. I want to pull something up here, tell you a few other things coming up here. Oh, my Facebook is taking a long time to load. So anytime you want to see what is coming up on the channel, if you go over to our Facebook group for Mountain Finance, it's just simply Mountain Finance. It's a private group. I'll approve you. Usually the only people I don't approve are accounts that are brand new, that have no history. And when you look at the profile, there's like one picture. Usually those are the accounts I'm like, yeah, that's probably a scammer. But I mean, if you've been on Facebook for 5 years and your profile looks normal, no problem with you getting in there. All right. And you'd think this would pop up a little bit better. There we go. All right. So then next week, I'm kind of excited about this. September 29th is the 1 year not the anniversary of the channel, but 1 year since the channel got monetized. So it's kind of cool. So I thought it would be fun. A lot of people make those how much I made on YouTube in 1 year. So I'm going to try my lot at one of those. Show you guys behind the scenes, how much I made, which videos have done really, really well. Yeah, and that'll be kind of cool. And so that's coming up on the 29th. Of course, we're coming close to the end of the month. So October 3rd is when we're dropping the next the next TFSA, 0 to 100K video. So that is dropping. And we're also coming up on the channel 2-year anniversary. So we'll have to do something special for that. I haven't figured that out yet, but that's coming up as well. So that's all kind of fun and awesome. All right. Andrew says, how do you believe precious metals will do? It really depends. I think it's going to be very much which metal. I think a lot of metals, for example, copper. I think copper, lithium, gold, some of these metals are going to do really, really well. Maybe even titanium. And this is just an offshot. I haven't looked at titanium in a while, but I'm just thinking if titanium starts to become the fad for all of the new things, like I know the new iPhones are made out of titanium, that might be something to look at. But definitely lithium and gold for precious, copper, when we're building, when we have a big focus on building apartments and things like that, well, there's a lot of copper that goes into that building process. So I think copper is a safe bet as well. Wayne says gold is up over $12 as we speak. Also, long gold with a leap call to 2024. Yeah, I do really like gold. I think gold is always a safe bet, especially when people are looking to hedge. Now, I know a lot of people, especially people in the crypto thing, are like, "Oh, Bitcoin's your hedge against inflation." Well, it's not there yet. It's not doing that yet. Maybe in the future it will be, but right now it's still gold. And we're at a point right now where the economy is in a rough time, and maybe we got a recession coming. I think we do, but there's a lot of people that think that we're going to have a soft landing. I'm not so sure about that soft landing. I mean, there's just so much pain out there that I really think we kind of need a recession to sort of cleanse the palate. But we'll have to sort of see. Andrew says, nice. And then what do you think about copper? So, yeah, copper, once I said, copper, I think is going to be a good bet. I think copper is going to do really, really well. So I would be huge on that. I think one of the companies I like copper wise, I haven't looked at them lately, but I used to dabble in them a little bit, was Mara, Mara. So they might be worth at least taking a look at and seeing how they're doing. But I do think copper is going to look pretty good. There's also a few companies that I've featured a few times in some of my lists that do gold and copper. So that's like getting the best of two different worlds. So that's never a bad idea. And of course, once again, as these minerals become more and more consistent and more, you're going to start seeing some ETFs pop up. I wouldn't even be surprised down the road if we end up getting like a Hamilton cover call ETF on that sector. I mean, they just came into the utility sector. They've got the bank sector going. They've got the U.S. They got they got U.S. sectors. I mean, the U.S. sector, right? Like the U.S. is a sector. I think it's in a, I was thinking about HYLD. So, you know, it's kind of just this interesting thing with what's going on. I think we're going to see ETFs have been really, really popular, and that's going to be really interesting to see, I think. So, Larry says, got long SQQQ as well next week. I'm not sure what the Fed will do. So, yeah, it's one of these things that I think they're going to hold. I think it's going to be a cautious hold. I think when we actually see when the Fed has their minutes come out, I think it's pretty much going to be like I think they're going to be a little bit more hawkish in the minutes. So that might, of course, impact the market when we looked at it. Have you looked at Amerigo? I've looked at them. I just haven't looked at them lately. But let's just take a quick look. Let's just take a very quick look at them right now. Just give me a second here. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Amerigo Resources. Something tells me that they do both gold and copper, but let me just take a look. Oh, no, they're doing, okay, so they're doing copper and molybdenum. Okay. Yeah, no, I've seen these guys before. And I'm just going to pull this up here. Yeah, and they've been moving in the right direction. Now, mind you, they were a penny stock, and they're kind of penny adjacent at the moment. They're only like $1.41, but they have been moving in the right direction. I get a little leery at penny adjacent stocks. Now, I will tell you, there is a penny adjacent stock that I have a lot of confidence in coming up in tomorrow's video. There's one. But this one here, I do like the look of, their 10-year. They've, been moving in the right direction. Little concerned, their EPS is just negative, but that's not a big deal breaker sometimes with a growing company. I do like to see that positive. I would be more or less cautious with this one. I would watch it. If I was going to sort of dabble in it, I probably wouldn't put a lot in it, but I might put a little bit in just to sort of play it that way. All right, so that's Amerigo. Whoops, there we go. So yeah, that's just one of those ones. And there's a lot of stocks that are that way that you're thinking, okay, well, you know, is this something I want to get into or not? Especially with penny stocks. And this is one of the issues with penny stocks. You can have some penny stocks that look really, really, really good. And then a week later, they can just totally, completely, enter the crapper very easily. So sometimes it happens. Like I know some people are like, okay, well, if I invest in 5 penny stocks, as long as one of them explodes, I'm good. And that's probably true, depending on how much it explodes. Because if you're not putting a ton in, now let's say you put $1,000 into 5 penny stocks. So you're putting $5,000, but one of them goes up like 1,000%. Well, that $1 then at that point is worth that 1,000 is all of a sudden worth an insane. It's worth like $10,000. So you're at a situation where you are in money because the one. But if you pick all 5 that are that turn out to be crapper stocks, then you've lost that money. And that's why you always want to make sure you're not throwing something in that you can't afford to lose. I feel a lot more confident with some of the bigger stocks because you know that even if they do have a bad thing happen to them, they're usually not going to crap to zero. And usually they'll bounce back. And especially in blue chip, if they go down, unless something absolutely horrific happens, but usually you can see that coming because it's going to be in the news. And then that okay, it's time to cut my losses in that case. But most cases they'll rebound around, they'll come back, you'll be fine. How about home builders? Yeah, home building has one problem. The one problem they have is just worker shortages. They still have worker shortages when it comes to construction and house building. So that is one downside. But with the need and the push to build more, I think that kind of balances each other out. I would still be a little bit. I would think when it comes to home builders, the area that I would concentrate on is not so much the construction companies that build the homes, but the companies that supply them with their products. So maybe a company that supplies materials. So in the material sector, I think there's a lot of things to be made there. And that's why some companies like, for example, HMM.A, they're a material stock. They produce they produce a product. Some of their they're electronic products that are in high demand. That's why they're doing so well. Because as long as there's a high demand for their products, it keeps the money coming in. And in their case, they do take on a fair amount of debt because they're using that debt to used to grow that company, and they're doing very, very well. Any of you who have jumped on that train like myself, you're in a lot of profit. Like I think right now I'm about $1,000 up on my initial investment into HMM.A. So definitely something I like. AEP. All right, let me pull that up there for you. AEP. And which one did you say? AEP.V. All right, that's because once again, it's going to be smaller because it's on the Vancouver Exchange. So 129, Atlas Engineered Products. Okay, so if they're making products, I like that part right away. Let's take a look. I like to always look at that 10-year. So lately they have been moving up. So they've been around 50, roughly an average of around 50 cents coming in towards the end of December of last year, and they've gone up to 129. So they seem to be doing okay here. They've got some of their stats look not so bad. Let me take a quick look at I want to see what their return on equity is looking like. Boop-a-doo. Key data here. Let's see here. No, I like that. Their return on equity, 31.16%. So that is not bad. Everything else I'm seeing looks pretty good. Their debt to equity ratio is less than they've got next to no debt. They got very little debt. That's not a bad company. If I had to bet on some penny stocks, this is one I would look at and I'd be like, okay, this one does make a little bit of sense. Their fundamentals look pretty good just from that initial glance at it. I would definitely say Atlas Engineered is worth, well, Engineered Products is worth a second look for sure. Not bad. That's a good little find, Andrew. And I think I like that one. I really like that one. All right. Let's see. They learned a lot of lessons. Are you talking about Atlas or are we talking about HMM? But no, Atlas seems to be doing really well. That's not a bad one. All right, guys, we're heading towards the end. So if you guys got any questions that you've been holding on to near the end, now's the time to drop those, and we will we'll address those before we close things out. So kind of a good thing. So we're almost into fall, everybody. So I think the end of summer is on the 21st. Which reminds me, did you guys see that the Weather Network got themselves hacked last week? It was actually funny because I went over to the Weather Network. I was looking at it and it was coming up all gobbledygook and it was just weird. And for sometimes it wasn't coming up at all. And I was like, when it finally did start to come back, looked like they changed their format. And I was like, oh, you guys have lost me, Weather Network, if this is your new format. But it turned out that they had actually been hacked. So that's kind of interesting. Those hackers, like we said before, they're out for everything. Now, I think people hacking something like the Weather Network are not really intending to try to steal money or something. I think in this case, they were just trying to sow chaos. Kind of interesting that this was happening just before Hurricane Lee was coming up. So, yeah. So if any of you guys saw it, and yes, Richard saw it. Yes, me too. The site looked weird. It really, really did. So I was just like, I'm so glad to have it back to normal again because it's like, I use that site a lot. I especially like to use the radar because that can sort of let me know, because a lot of times you see the forecast and it says, okay, well, there's a 30% chance of rain. Well, if I go to the radar, I can see where the rain is. And if it's nowhere near me, I know that hour, I can put the cats out or something because I know it's not going to rain. Just a little things like that. So, yeah, anyway. That's me and the Weather Network. All right. Well, guys, I think this is the end of the line for today. Thank you guys all for being here. Fantastic time as always. We'll be back here again next week. And we'll next week I'll have better ideas about what we're going to do for the 2-year anniversary of the channel. Let's do something kind of fun, I think. Until then, everybody, take care. Have a great afternoon. Enjoy your last weekend of the summer. All right. Take care, everybody.